Several men walk into a supermarket in Kansas, USA. They are not there to shop, and they are not looking for anyone. They simply blend into the crowd unnoticed. The first explosion goes off, followed by a second blast. A terrified mother and daughter instinctively rush for the exit. But before they can escape, one of the attackers blocks their way. The man only looks down at them. Then he presses the detonator. In just a few seconds, more than a dozen lives are wiped out. The US government quickly links the attack to Mexican drug cartels. They believe the cartels used smuggling routes to bring terrorists into the United States, but no one realized that a border war built on a false assumption has already begun. Shortly before the supermarket bombing, a Border Patrol helicopter spots a group of migrants crossing illegally. Faced with warnings and blinding spotlights, most of them stop, but one man suddenly breaks into a run. The helicopter forces him toward a cliff, and the man drops his bag and kneels down. But the moment agents approach, he detonates the bomb strapped to his body. Several officers are killed instantly. The religious items left behind at the scene lead US officials to believe terrorists are using smuggling networks. To uncover the route behind the operation, special forces launch a raid in Somalia. They capture Bashir, a pirate leader hiding in the Gulf of Aden. The man assigned to interrogate him is CIA operative Matt. Bashir claims the attackers came from Yemen and had nothing to do with Somali pirates. But Matt already has the key evidence. People from Yemen under US sanctions cannot travel on normal international flights. To reach Mexico, they have to first cross the Gulf of Aden, using routes controlled by Somali pirates before being moved into the Americas by smugglers. Bashir still refuses to cooperate, so Matt makes a satellite call right in front of him. Seconds later, a missile strikes from the sky, destroying his mansion thousands of miles away in Yemen. Matt then switches to another surveillance feed, showing him that his wife and children are being tracked in real time. Bashir finally realizes they were never there to negotiate. To save his family, he has no choice but to reveal the entire smuggling network. It turns out, the cartel did not help the terrorists because of shared beliefs, but because they wanted the attacks to tighten border security. If drug supplies decrease, street prices will rise rapidly. Matt returns to Washington with the intelligence, but officials choose not to eliminate the Reyes cartel directly, because killing one kingpin would only create a bigger power vacuum. Other gangs would fight for control, making the border even more chaotic. Their real goal is to start a war between the two cartels, letting the Reyes and Mata organization destroy each other, while the US stays behind the scenes, controlling the outcome. This unofficial mission eventually falls on Matt. The government gives him unlimited funding and allows him to build his own team, but leaves no official record of the operation. If it fails, everyone involved will be abandoned immediately.
Just to be clear, you want to see this thing through? I'm gonna have to get dirty.
Matt accepts the terms, because in his world, rules and procedures can be sacrificed, as long as the mission gets results. He quickly acquires weapons and assembles a team of mercenaries. But operating inside cartel territory requires more than just firepower. He needs someone who understands how the cartels operate and is willing to cross every line. So Matt turns to his old partner, Alejandro. Alejandro was once a prosecutor, but his wife and daughter were brutally murdered by a cartel. The man behind it all was Carlos Reyes, the head of the Reyes cartel, from the day he lost his family. He stopped believing in the law. His only purpose in life is to finish his revenge with his own hands.
No rules this time. Turning you loose.
How loose?
Carlos Reyes. How's that for loose?
Hearing his enemy's name, Alejandro immediately agrees to join. To Matt, this is just another covert operation, but to Alejandro, it is the opportunity he has waited years for. The first step of the operation is assassinating the Mata cartel's top lawyer and framing the Reyes cartel for the murder. The lawyer's car has barely left the apartment when Alejandro and his men ambush him. The bodyguards are quickly taken out. The lawyer is shot in both legs and left helpless in the street. Alejandro removes his mask. He makes sure the lawyer sees his face before executing him in public.
Adios.
Such a bold assassination is quickly seen as a challenge from the Reyes cartel to the Mata cartel. But one lawyer's death is not enough to start an all-out war. So Matt moves to the second phase, kidnapping Carlos Reyes's 16-year-old daughter Isabel. She grew up in privilege, spoiled and rebellious at school. No matter what trouble she caused, her father's name always protected her, but she never realized that her identity would one day become a weapon against him. On her way home from school, Isabel's convoy enters a narrow street. Matt's equipment instantly cuts off all communications. The guards realize something is wrong, and the hidden teams attack from every direction. After a brief firefight, Isabel is hooded and taken away by force. Matt's team deliberately leaves one survivor alive so he can deliver a message to Carlos Reyes. But when Mexican police arrive, they do not rescue the survivor. They secretly execute him instead. After seeing the footage, Matt immediately understands. The police have already been compromised by the cartels. The original framing plan may have already fallen apart. Matt is forced to activate the backup plan. First, they move Isabel to a safe house inside the United States. Then Alejandro puts on a DEA uniform and works with arriving state police to stage a fake hostage rescue. Isabel is locked inside a bathroom, hearing nothing but gunfire outside. When the door opens again, all the kidnappers are lying dead on the ground. Wearing a uniform, Alejandro naturally becomes the man who rescues her. She never realizes the truth from beginning to end, that the people who kidnapped her and the ones who saved her are the same group. Matt's next move is to send the girl back into Mexico and leave her in Mata cartel territory. As long as Reyes finds his daughter there, he will believe the kidnapping was carried out by the Mata cartel, and the war between the two cartels will become impossible to stop. To get the girl across the border, Matt contacts Mexican police and requests armed escorts. American military vehicles and Mexican police cars quickly form a joint convoy, with drones overhead, monitoring their every move. But once the convoy enters the desert, the blowing sand instantly blocks their visibility. A corrupt officer inside the convoy suddenly turns his weapon on them, while cartel gunmen hidden nearby launch their attack. They already knew this was the route they would take. In the critical moment, Matt orders the drones to strike back. Missiles instantly destroy the hidden vehicles. Using their superior equipment, the team quickly eliminates the remaining attackers. But in the chaos, Isabel jumps out of the vehicle and disappears into the endless sand. Making things worse, another group of Mexican police is heading toward the battlefield. Many officers are already dead at the scene. If the American team gets trapped there, the entire covert operation will be exposed and could trigger an international crisis. Matt has no choice but to order a retreat to the US, but Alejandro decides to stay behind and search for the missing Isabel alone. Before leaving, Matt gives him a tracking device. Once he gets close to the border, the extraction team will be able to locate him. During Matt's retreat, he is stopped by Mexican police vehicles again, but they cannot keep killing, so they fire at the road ahead to force them to stop. Meanwhile, Isabel reaches another road and stops a passing car, but the men stepping out are the same cartel members who escaped earlier. Just as she is about to be taken away, Alejandro arrives in time and takes them down. After everything that has happened, Isabel finally understands that she was nothing more than a pawn, used by the Americans. She also recognizes the man standing before her, the prosecutor whose wife and daughter were killed because of her father. Alejandro has every reason to take his hatred out on her. Yet, in this desert, he becomes her only protector. The two find a deaf and mute farmer living in the desert. Alejandro communicates with him fluently through sign language, allowing Isabel to see for the first time the part of this cold-blooded killer that has not completely disappeared. The brief peace inside the farmer's home reminds them both of the families they lost long ago. One lost the protection of her father, the other lost his wife and daughter. Alejandro begins to see in the girl a reflection of his own daughter. Meanwhile, Matt is called to Washington for a meeting the moment he returns to base. The latest investigation confirms the suicide bombers at the supermarket were all native-born American citizens. There is no evidence they entered the country through Mexico, meaning the entire operation was built on false intelligence from the very beginning. They not only kidnapped a cartel leader's daughter, but also crossed the border and killed Mexican officers. If the truth gets out, the consequences would be far worse than the terrorist attack itself. To distance the US government from the operation, officials order Matt to shut everything down immediately and eliminate everyone who knows the truth, including not only Isabel, but Alejandro as well. Matt always believed he was ruthless enough, until this moment, when he realizes that politicians who never pull the trigger themselves can be even more ruthless. But facing direct orders, he still makes the satellite call.
They want me to cut ties. You gotta get rid of her.
I can't do that.
What are you telling me?
Not this one.
Don't put me in that situation.
You gotta do what you gotta do. I'll figure it out.
This brief conversation puts two brothers in arms on completely different sides. After hanging up, Alejandro decides to take the girl back to the United States. To avoid being recognized, Isabel cuts off her long hair. Alejandro hides the tracker inside her shoe, so they won't lose each other in the chaos. After a long journey, they reach a smuggling camp, planning to cross the border on a bus. But before the bus leaves, a young man named Miguel recognizes him. Miguel joined the smuggling operation to make money. Days earlier, he had crossed paths with Alejandro on the road. Those cold eyes left a lasting impression on him, so he immediately tells the camp leader. The leader does not expose them right away. Instead, he waits until the bus reaches the desert before ordering his men to draw their weapons. Isabel is quickly identified as well. An American agent bringing Reyes' daughter into Mata territory is a fortune falling straight into their hands. Alejandro tries to negotiate, but he is knocked unconscious and tied up. To train a new recruit, the leader gives a gun to a young boy and orders him to carry out the execution. When the boy freezes in fear, the leader kills him on the spot. Then he hands the gun to Miguel. Only then does Miguel truly understand. Joining a gang does not mean gaining protection. It means losing the right to choose. Under the threat of death, Miguel has no choice but to pull the trigger. The bullet hits Alejandro, and Isabel cries out in pain. The entire scene is transmitted back to Matt through the drone feed. Matt watches his longtime partner fall before his eyes, and his rage finally explodes. Two Black Hawk helicopters quickly catch up with the cartel convoy. One blocks the road ahead, while the other opens fire with a mounted machine gun. In less than a minute, every kidnapper is wiped out. According to Washington's orders, Matt was supposed to eliminate Isabel as well, but in the end, he brings her onto the helicopter. Matt refuses to let his friend's final choice become a meaningless sacrifice. But no one expects Alejandro to survive. The bullet passed through his mouth without hitting anything fatal. He wakes up from unconsciousness and crawls toward a nearby body. Using a belt buckle, he cuts through the tape around his hands. When he reaches the battlefield, he finds only bodies everywhere, but no sign of Isabel. He immediately realizes Matt must have taken her away. 1 year later, Miguel, who once trembled when pulling the trigger, has completely changed. A gang tattoo now covers his neck. When Miguel walks into a warehouse, he finds Alejandro already waiting for him, but Alejandro is not looking for revenge.
So you want to be a Sicario? Let's talk like a future.
And that is where the film ends. The cartel war started by the United States never truly reaches a conclusion, and no one is ever held responsible for the consequences of false intelligence. That is exactly what the film is trying to say. In this border desert, no one is born a killer. Isabel was born into a cartel family. Miguel was born into poverty. They appear to stand on completely different sides, but both are dragged by a war created by adults into lives where they no longer have a choice. Alejandro's humanity toward the girl does not truly end the cycle of violence. It only proves that even when someone is consumed by hatred, there may still be one final line they refuse to cross. But as long as those who create the mistakes never have to face the consequences, and the powerful continue using children to serve their own interests and revenge, the Isabel who was saved today could become another Reyes tomorrow, and the Miguel forced to pull the trigger today could become the next Alejandro. What truly traps the border has never been one single cartel leader, but a system that turns everyone into a pawn.